What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about John Gardner's Grendel. This came out sometime in the 70s, and I feel like 1971, and I feel like a lot of people knew about this book before I did. I remember a friend of mine in high school reading this, and for whatever reason, it just took me this long to finally get around to reading it, and this is one of those situations. I saw a lot of really positive reviews for this book on Goodreads, and I sincerely wondered if I was reading a different book than everyone else, because I hated this book a lot. In theory, I like the idea of a classic story where you have your hero and you have your villain, and then what if we flip it? What if we tell the story from the villain's perspective? In theory, I like that idea. A year or two ago, I read a book by Nancy Springer. She is the author of the Enola Holmes books. She wrote a book called I Am Mordred, and I liked the concept of the book. I loved the idea of, let's tell Mordred's story. Mordred is the guy who brought down Camelot. Let's look at why he did that. And unfortunately, that book didn't work for me because Mordred finds out that he is predetermined to destroy Camelot. He is going to be history's worst villain, and he finds out about that, and he doesn't like that, and then he makes one half-hearted attempt to thwart his destiny, and then when that doesn't work, he says, oh well, I guess I'm going to be a villain, and then he takes his soul out of his body, and it gets put in a raven, and then he's like a soulless sociopath who is totally okay with being a bad guy, and it just felt like a really lazy attempt at telling the story of the villain. That isn't an interesting look at why this guy became a villain. Being told that you have to be a villain, oh, okay, that's not interesting. And that is exactly what John Gardner's Grendel does. Grendel is a monster. His mom is also a monster, but for some reason, Grendel is capable of speech, and his mom is not. And that is not the case in the epic poem of Beowulf. Grendel is just a monster in that. But Grendel is kind of looking for his place in the world. He meets some humans at one point, and they are scared of him. Sort of. He's trapped. His foot is trapped in a hole in the ground, and some humans meet him, and then one of them is like, he needs to eat some, he's hungry. He needs to eat pigs, and I think this person is like a soothsayer, and so the leader of the group says, okay, someone go get him some pigs, and then Grendel is happy, and he's like, pigs, and they don't understand what he's saying, and then someone in the group starts attacking him, and so he is scared, he fights back, and so at first I thought, okay, so it's kind of like the Hulk, where it's like, why can't people just leave Hulk alone? And then the rest of the world thinks of Hulk as a villain because he keeps throwing these temper tantrums because people keep using and abusing him and manipulating him for their own purposes. And I thought, okay, so it's kind of a misunderstanding thing where they think that he is going to attack them, and so they attack him first, and that's what is the catalyst. That's not great, but I thought, okay, maybe this can make it work. But that's not really the origin of why Grendel is evil, because Grendel eventually goes to visit the dragon, and the dragon, I'm pretty sure, is the same the dragon that Beowulf fights in the last third of the epic poem of Beowulf, even though that was in like another continent. If you've read Beowulf, Beowulf is a Geat, Geat, and Grendel was harassing the Danes. They're like on, a good distance away. They're not next door neighbors or anything. Beowulf's dad knew Hrothgar, who was the king of the Danes, but they weren't super close, or like they weren't. I'm going to have to throw a map up here, I guess, on the screen, but the Geats were not, like, right there next to the Danes, and so I don't know why Grendel would be talking to the dragon, who is harassing the Geats in the last third of Beowulf, which would be a good little ways away, but whatever. And so the dragon is able to see the future, and the dragon basically says, it is what it is. I can see the future, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I can change the future. And by the way, you are an evil monster, Grendel, and you might as well just be an evil monster. And then after that, basically, Grendel decides, okay, I'm going to be an evil monster. It's not interesting. It's not even entertaining. I was at least entertained by a good portion of I Am Mordred. I was disappointed with how it ended, but I was hopeful through a good portion of I Am Mordred, thinking, well, maybe they'll be able to pull it off. I was not entertained reading any of this book. At times, it's just doing some really weird experimental stuff. At one point, it just suddenly becomes a poem. Like there's a significant portion of a chapter that's structured like a poem. The rest of the book isn't like that. And if you wanted to do this as an epic poem, as alliterative verse, which is how Beowulf was originally written, that would be interesting because Beowulf was originally written like that. And so if you're wanting to tell the mirror story of Grendel, this is from his point of view, and you're doing it in the format that the poem of Beowulf was originally written, that would be awesome. Now, I'm not a big poem person, but you know what? If you're able to do that, I would read it and I would give it the old college try on trying to understand it. But you just got part of one chapter that's structured like that, and then it goes back to being a prose story. And then later on, Grendel is talking to this blind old priest, and then some other priests come in. So Grendel hides, and then it suddenly is written like a stage play where it says, first priest, colon, hey, what are you doing out here? Second priest, colon, oh, he's acting crazy again. Third priest, colon, I hate it when he acts crazy. And why? Why are you doing this, John Gardner? It just really feels like he said, I want to get weird with it. I want to try some different stuff, and I hated it. Don't get cutesy with your writing, guys. Just write. Do not try. This feels like, this reminds me, when I was in college, I took a few creative writing classes, and there was one creative writing class. I remember there was a student, he eventually started arguing with the teacher, and eventually he just dropped out of the class. But before that, I remember he wrote something, and it was written really weird. It reminds me of this, where he had, instead of, the assignment might have been write a play or something like that, and instead of, name colon line of dialogue, it was name quotation mark line of dialogue, but then no close quotation mark. Something like that, where he was like, oh, it's easy to understand why I'm doing this. And this guy thought very highly of himself, and it looks a lot like this. This feels like a college student said, I am smarter than everybody else, and I am going to show how smart I am. Look at this weird experimental garbage that I am writing. I hated this book. I was seeing a lot of really high praise for this online, and I don't understand. Like I said, in theory, the idea of let's write the villain story, I don't have a problem with that. Any villain, I can't think of one, for example, Cinderella's stepmother. There's an example, okay? Now, I'm only very vaguely familiar with the Cinderella fairy tale outside of Disney. I have up there on that shelf a collection of Italian fairy tales, and the Italian version of Cinderella is up there. I believe there was also a Chinese version of the story, so I don't know which one came first, but let's just look at the Disney version of Cinderella. Cinderella's stepmother, pretty evil, okay? But I would be really interested in seeing somebody say, why is she evil? Let's write the story from her perspective, and can you make me buy it? Can you make it so that an evil witch doesn't tell Cinderella's stepmother, by the way, you need to be evil, and then she says, oh, darn it, I hate it when that happens, and then she's just evil. That's what this does. That's what I Am Mordred does. It's lazy. You can do better. I know you guys can do better. I could have done better when I was 18. I feel like this is just the laziest approach to this story. I want to see something more interesting. I don't mind seeing a bad guy who is just a little bit bad and does some bad things, but maybe in their mind they have a really good reason for doing it. And if you can make me buy it, I will be okay with the bad guy doing a lot of bad stuff. I have talked about this several times lately. A Song of Ice and Fire. You've got some characters in A Song of Ice and Fire are just really evil. Euron Greyjoy, Ramsay Snow, they're just evil. Okay, there's nothing redeeming about those characters. But then, slight spoilers for some of the later books, you've got Tyrion, who, he's a likable character, and he does some good stuff, but then because people kind of rain on his parade, he turns it right back around on people, Grendel, and he does some pretty bad stuff, and I buy it. I don't necessarily approve of what he's doing, but I understand why he's doing it. That's what I wanted with Grendel. That's what I wanted with I Am Mordred. If somebody comes out and says that they are going to do a story about Moriarty, and they're going to make him a sympathetic character, and by the end of the book, we're going to be rooting against Sherlock Holmes. Okay, but you have to try really hard to make that work, and I don't want it to be as lazy and one-dimensional as this book is. And what's really weird about this is that even before Grendel goes to the dragon and finds out, oh, predestiny, oh well, he's already a nasty piece of work, and it doesn't really do anything to make me care about him. I saw someone online saying they wanted to adopt this poor little guy, and on the back, warm, friendly, compassionate, I am not making this up. Warm, friendly, compassionate, a kind of medieval King Kong. Seriously, they must have read a different book than I did. I hated it. I will never read anything else by John Gardner again. This was awful. I hope you guys liked this video. I will see you guys in the future with something else. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.